Welcome back to Plug and Pay, a talk show where we bring you the latest and greatest of global payroll every week. I'm Angelique, Payzar's head of content, and today I'm here with Max, our head of service delivery. Hello, Max. How are you doing today?
Hey, Angelique, I'm doing great. Thanks. It's good to be back for another episode of Plug and Pay, and I'm really excited about the topic we're going to talk about today, but I'll hand over to you because the suspense we need to build up for this episode, Angelique.
Yes, there has actually been a lot of suspense building up because we did another poll, right, over on your LinkedIn.
We did.
And so today we wanted to discuss payroll accuracy. So we're going to talk about the poll and actually share some of the results, some of the comments, what people were saying. So, well, if you can start us off and introduce the question and the potential answers and then the results, please.
Yes, sure. So a topic that's dear to the hearts of many payroll professionals, I think. So the question was, what is the main root cause of payroll errors? And I just want to thank everyone for engaging on the post because we had an astonishing 195 votes in the poll, which is basically doubling, almost tripling what we had in the last poll. So it makes me believe that it's a topic indeed that's very prominent in the hearts of payroll professionals. And there was there were four different answers that people could choose. The first one was changes after cutoff as a main root cause for payroll errors. The second one was poor quality of data inputs. The third one was manual processing of inputs. And the fourth one was poor local payroll services. Now, out of the 195 respondents, 51% of them, so more than half, chose poor quality of data inputs. Relatively closely followed with 30% choosing manual processing of inputs. So that basically means that poor quality of data inputs and manually processing inputs made up 81% of the main root causes for payroll. Then it was followed by changes after cutoff, which people chose for 13%, and only 6% chose poor payroll services. Now, worth noting is that it was a single choice poll, so you couldn't choose multiple answers.
Yeah.
Of course, we know there are many root causes in payroll that could cause errors, but of course the question was, what's the main root cause? Because we wanted people to think about, okay, what's that single most pesky thing that causes headaches when the payrolls are delivered? So those are the results for you, Angelique.
Yeah, and as you said, it was not only was there a lot of people actually participating in the poll, but also commenting. So as you say, it was definitely something that people had their views on. And I actually just wanted to share some of the comments with you guys today. So one of them actually referred to the potential answers. They wanted to add something to the list. So they said, I would even add one more option to the list: inadequate controls and reviews. That's interesting. Perhaps there's more than one potential option. Maybe you'll have to do a part two. But throughout the rest of the commenters, it was, I would say, a consensus between poor quality and manual input. Some people did say that. And another actually commented, for both poor quality and manual input, these risks can be mitigated by following a peer review process. So some are actually even going as far as to give, advice on how we can avoid that. And in regards to mitigating risks, another one commented, you must evaluate the capability of your source system and ensure you use it to its full capacity by way of adding checks or constraints to capture the errors even before they get stored on the database. Secondly, use data integrations and middlewares to transmit and transform data to target system with minimum or no manual intervention. So this last one was particularly interesting to me because it was kind of touching on the fact of like automation to be able to avoid those errors, in the first place before it gets to that stage. So I don't know, what do you think about these comments and about your opinion on the poll in general?
Yeah, it's a lot to grasp. So first of all, again, great to see so much engagement in the community. I'm a firm believer that all of us need to share our experience and views together to kind of elevate the profession. So when thinking of the comments, let's maybe unpick some of those. And find it very interesting and intriguing that a comment mentioned that it is hard to choose between poor quality of data inputs and manually processing inputs, because this also resonates with me if I think back of my global payroll manager days, which aren't in the too far distant past, actually. Because indeed, we were constantly battling for great quality inputs, timely inputs in a format that we need, tailored to any local specific needs. But then we also were actually processing those bad data quality inputs manually. So you kind of see a snowball effect with poor quality data inputs and then manually processing those, which raises the risk of manual errors. But it also puts pressure on the payroll calendar, because if you have poor quality data inputs, it means you probably need to go back and forth with the people who input that bad quality to you to verify if it's actually correct or to complement any missing data elements. And once you finally have that good quality data set, you then still need to process it manually. And that's all in that squeezed window of the payroll calendar, where you need to submit payroll changes to your payroll provider, and then they need to start processing it. So it becomes kind of a challenging time. And that kind of brings me to the comment you think you started off with to add one more option to the list around inadequate controls and reviews. Now, we did a webinar, I think in August, around how to unlock the secrets for a compliant global payroll with smart controls. So I'm a big fan of global payroll control frameworks, Angelique. If I could spend a Friday night just designing and reviewing global payroll controls, I am a happy payroll professional. So when I think of controls, they always must mitigate a risk. If you do a control and it doesn't mitigate a risk, don't do the control. And I actually once explained to my kids, so Bas of 4 and Fleur of 7, when they asked me, Papa, what do you do? I said, well, I design controls to make sure everybody gets paid accurately, on time, and compliantly. They said, well, what does a risk and what does a control mean? So I said to them, you want to be on time for school? They said, yes. Okay, so that's your objective, being on time in school. I said, a risk might be that you wake up too late and you sleep over. They said, yes, but that's a risk. So how do we then mitigate a control? They actually told me, well, a control is that we set an alarm so we wake up on time. I said, well, that's risk and control for you. You can apply that in daily life. You can apply it in global payroll too. And when we think about controls, you must balance two elements. There is a control type, which can be preventative. So it prevents something from happening, or it's detective, that you kind of inherently know with a process across many, many countries with many, many sources and a lot of data elements flowing through. There could always be something that you can't prevent. Therefore, you also need a detective control. And then you need to balance a control method. So you either do it manually, you do it automated, or IT dependent. And IT dependent could be you use a system generated report that then a person reviews. And a perfect balance of those across all stages in kind of the cyclic periodic payroll process, from pre-payroll, run payroll to post-payroll, is what you need to look for. Now, these themes around poor data quality inputs and manually processing are big, fairly chunky items to address as a whole, right? You could say, well, we need more automation. Well, we need more digitization. You won't find any person who disagrees with you, but you'll also not find a person to then know where to start. So what's important, and I think this is also to one of the comments, is to drill down on those. Now, again, I'll plug in another webinar we did actually earlier this month in November, which was around how to improve the most important payroll KPIs. Because what we see in the results of this poll around data quality inputs, manually processed, can actually be related to two main KPIs that I would say every payroll professional in the world should track and probably does track, is payroll input accuracy and payroll delivery accuracy. So delivery is when the payroll is approved, is it still accurate, or do you find errors? Payroll input is, hey, have you found any errors that you've corrected before you've approved payroll? Now, if you start making these errors visible and tracking them consistently, you start to actually unpick those big themes around poor data quality or manual processing. and actually list them down to the lowest level possible, link it to a source system, link it to even a person. If you create a culture of continuous improvement, link it down to a process, a source system, a specific country, a specific pay element. And if you do this, you can actually start thinking about targeted interventions based on actual data points. So rather than saying, we need to solve this big theme, you actually want to be more specific. So you can start thinking about peer reviews. I think there was also actually a former colleague of mine in Shell who said that, which makes me think back. We had, Angelique, can you believe this? We had daily logging reports. So you had one person who sat at a desk who did the inputs into a well-known system called SAP. And then at the end of the day, they had a buddy. So there was a buddy who did a peer review with a daily logging report. And actually, at the time, this is years ago, it was printed on a piece of paper to see all the different changes across all the different items they put transactions in, and they went line by line to tick it off, and those daily logging reports were stored in a central location because it was actually a stocks control. Now, if we would, of course, we're here also at Pesar, Angelique, if we would link it to what we do, we have the tools you would need to automate that, digitize that, and to make sense of poor data quality inputs. Now, this comes back, I think, to the last comment that was made, where you would not want to look at the root causes if you want to get the data right in the source system, right? Angelique, there was a comment around that too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which, of course, is perfect. That's what you should aim for. However, that's what you learn in business school. That's what you learn through courses, but then reality kicks in. What if you're a payroll team that reports into finance and you get your data qualities from the HR folks, right? You should always partner with them to make sure you have great quality data inputs, which again should be underpinned by KPIs and data points, and what is the effect of it? What's the root cause? What's the downside for the employees, the employee experience? But you don't just get a blank piece of paper to say, well, this is what payroll wants, and then your stakeholders say, sure, we'll go implement it in our global HCM so you get great quality data. So you want to make yourself less dependent of other people to get that quality data input, and at the same time make sure you have automation and digitization to either take quality inputs or bad quality inputs and make some sense out of it. So that was a very long answer to your question, Angelique. What do you make of these comments? But it sparked a little bit of passion for payroll for me.
No, definitely. And yeah, it was making me think the same, about we did a demo not long ago about the data validation feature that we have at PSR, and we were basically talking about that, really about catching those as early on as possible. So no, definitely interesting, and thank you for sharing your specific insights as well from your time at Shell and throughout the years.
Sure, trip down memory lane, Angelique.
And is there anything else you wanted to share this week, actually, because it's been a little while since we chatted, so what's been going on in your payroll world?
Oh, my payroll world is a wonderful world to live in, Angelique, to start with. But yes, so I was talking to a global payroll manager of one of our customers, and they shared kind of the predicament she's in during budgeting season. So as we all know, inflation is still at a high. I think it's around 7.5% on an aggregated level. So that also means that when you're doing your budgeting, typically your labor-related costs due to increases of employer cost or mandatory inflation on salaries, your budget for people goes up. Then your tech stack or your service stack is also sensitive to inflation. While she shared, well, actually my budget is fairly limited. Still, I need to make improvements, and the business wants me to look for those. So she's really challenged in her way to, within a kind of a limited budget, with inflation on the rise, she still needs to find ways to make incremental improvements. Now, This could be related to the poll results, for instance, removing manual processes or focusing on data quality, but it can also be related to better general ledger outputs into your finance systems because there's some inefficiency in the accuracy there, possibly even leading to some financial misstatements. And you alluded to the demo you did yesterday, so I also just want to highlight the importance of modularity in a platform. So you can only bite off as much as you can chew. Well, you're the native speaker, Angelique. Is that an actual saying?
Yes, exactly. Don't bite off more than you can chew.
Don't bite off more than you can chew. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you know exactly what you need to bite off instead of doing the whole cookie, right? You might just need the right top corner of the cookie that you need to bite off. So this is something I wanted to highlight with our platform. You could look at HR Connect to make sure you validate the data inputs, have change detection, make sure mandatory fields are there. You're able to quickly make changes. You're able to optimize your controls beyond Excel VLOOKUPs, my dear ladies and gentlemen, beyond Excel VLOOKUPs, and just operate it as a standalone module. So you want to solve what matters and only pay for what you would exactly need. So I just wanted to highlight for people who are in budgeting season or close to budget season, make sure you put targeted interventions in there, even in a squeezed budgeting environment. So that's something to consider for the listeners.
No, definitely. And actually, if that's something that our listeners are, asking about, we can definitely do some more content on that for sure. So yeah, thank you as always to you and to the listeners for getting involved, contributing, sharing all your opinions. So I think that's a good place for us to end today's episode. Thank you again for joining me, Max, and we will be back again next week and every week. So I hope that you'll be tuning in either via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe to Plug and Pay. And we'll also be running other events that you can find out over on our LinkedIn, Payzar. And yeah, that's it from me. Anything to add, Max?
Yes, thanks, Angelique. Well, again, thanks for the listeners and for everyone who participates on the poll. And speaking of polls, next week, so that would be already in December, I think on the 4th of December, we'll issue a new poll on LinkedIn. And I'm thinking, Angelique, to do it around controls, because that kind of links to the prior poll around errors and how you can mitigate those with meaningful control. So I'll think about a nice poll question for next week. And just all the payroll professionals out there, I hope you had a great November payroll and you are mentally preparing for the rush and manic of December payroll, perhaps with earlier cutoffs, earlier pay dates, year end, year start. Well, I applaud you for staying calm and always delivering. And we hope to see you and hear you again next week. Thanks, Angelique.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.